You know that feeling when your chest feels like it's about to explode? When every breath seems sweeter than the last? When the world hums softly around you and you feel untouchable in your own bubble of bliss? That was me, once, stupidly happy, laughing at the little things, drinking my coffee as Arjun, my husband of 6 years, brought me mine in bed, still warm, still perfect, as if he had planned it just to watch me smile. He remembered everything. My birthdays, our anniversaries, the little details that made my heart swell. The way he'd brush my hair back even when it was sticky with sweat after a long day. The soft whispers of "you're beautiful" even when I was in my worst pajamas with yesterday's pizza stains clinging to me. And I believed it. Believed in the perfect little world we'd built. The solid, enviable life that others would look at and sigh with longing. I thought we were untouchable. The kind of couple whose love seemed to radiate from every photograph, every mundane morning, every shared silence. And yet I had no idea how fragile that illusion was, how easily it could crumble under the weight of one careless moment. It all started on an unremarkable Tuesday, the kind that drags through the week with gray light and the dull sound of traffic. When Arjun was in the shower and his backup work phone buzzed quietly on the kitchen counter, the screen illuminating a name I had never seen, Gia, and beneath it, a message preview that froze my blood. Can't stop thinking about last night. You taste like sin. My chest didn't just tighten. It collapsed, and for a brief moment, the entire kitchen seemed unreal, distant, like I was watching it through water. My hands moved of their own accord, lifted the phone, and it wasn't even locked. As if he assumed I would never, could never, look. Inside, I discovered not a one-time mistake, not a momentary lapse, but an entire hidden life, a meticulously constructed web of betrayal, of videos, photos, messages that he had cataloged under fake names like Rohit, college friend, hundreds of entries, every word, every photo, every touch designed to lie to me and yet be discovered so easily. And then the first video, I remember the timestamp, 2 weeks prior, when he had been on a team-building trip. And there she was, Gia, my former junior from the office, the girl who had once brought me cupcakes and called me ma'am with sincerity, on her knees, looking up at my husband with wide, innocent eyes that were nothing but a mask, whispering, "Tell me I'm better than your wife." And he did. His voice, guttural and raw, commanding, something I had never heard him speak in, said, "You're everything she's not. You're perfect." I saw him in ways I had never imagined, and my stomach turned with nausea, with rage, with the kind of disbelief that leaves your body frozen yet aching. Every video after that showed the precision, the control, the casual cruelty with which he orchestrated this hidden life. Gia in my kitchen, in our bedroom, in our bed, wearing my clothes, touching objects that belonged to me, repeating his words, obeying his directions. And I realized that my life, the one I had believed so solid, was nothing more than a backdrop for his secret indulgences. Pain came in waves, a living, breathing entity sitting on my chest, stealing my air, wrapping my lungs in ice. Yet amidst the ache, a strange clarity settled over me. I could break. I could scream. I could confront him immediately and perhaps destroy myself in the process. Or I could do something far more powerful, far more deliberate, and I chose the latter. I began my transformation, silently, deliberately. I studied the videos, the messages, not with the eyes of a hurt wife, but with the meticulous gaze of a strategist, learning everything. His responses, his desires, his weaknesses, the rhythm of her moans, the tilt of her head, the cadence of her whispers. I memorized her moves, her expressions, everything that made her the fantasy he had lusted after, and I promised myself I would surpass them all, that I would become a force he never imagined, a dark, irresistible shadow that would turn his own game against him. I began sculpting my body at the gym, not for vanity, but for war, honing each curve, each sinew, each movement into a weapon of seduction and control. I rehearsed in front of mirrors, perfecting the ways I would step, the ways I would command attention, learning the exact subtleties that would dismantle him piece by piece. My entire world narrowed into this singular purpose, to become the ultimate fantasy he never knew he had wanted. And the day of my action, my revenge, was carefully chosen. A night he believed would be ours alone. A date night in a home that had been his domain, now ready to become my stage. I chose a dress, deep blood wine red, soft yet commanding, smelling of jasmine and darker notes that teased and threatened. And when he walked in, exhausted and unaware, his eyes froze, caught between confusion, guilt, and the raw, unprocessed lust that I had trained him to respond to. Without a word, I took his hand, leading him not to the bedroom but to his study, his sacred man cave, where he thought he was untouchable. And there I executed everything I had learned. Every whisper, every touch, every look calculated to mirror Gia but twist her into my dominion, my command, my dark perfection. I watched him unravel, his mind short-circuiting, his body betraying him, surrendering to the confusion and shock until he was mine. Not physically, but mentally, wholly undone by the presence I had cultivated. And when it was over, I lifted my phone, opened the gallery to the first screenshot, the one of Gia in our bed, and held it up to him, watching the color drain from his face, the horror, the shame, the realization blooming in his eyes. And I whispered, "Happy anniversary, my love. Did you enjoy my performance?" His mouth opened and closed, no sound forming as I straightened my dress and told him he would sleep there, alone, thinking about which version of me he feared losing most, because that night marked not just a victory, but the beginning of the war, the one where I had all his secrets and he had none of mine, and I knew, in the stillness that followed, that this was only the start, and I was just getting warmed up. Subscribe right now for more dark true stories. New confessions drop every day. The night had settled like a velvet shroud over our house, the city lights dim in the distance, and I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to his shallow breaths, each one a subtle admission of defeat, a reminder that the man who had once thought himself untouchable was now utterly exposed. And I felt a surge of power, cold and intoxicating, as I realized that every detail of his secret life was cataloged, every hidden fantasy mapped, and I had turned it all back on him with precision, crafting a performance that blended knowledge, seduction, and dominance, until he was no longer the husband I had married, but a puppet in the hands of a woman he had underestimated, a predator who had studied him patiently, relentlessly, and now, fully. And I smiled at the thought of what was coming next, because he was mine to control, mine to punish. And I would not stop until every lie, every betrayal, every stolen moment had been paid for. And the next morning, I would wake knowing I had altered the course of our lives irreversibly. Yet I paused, because my attention was caught by another layer of this web. Gia. The girl who had once called me ma'am, the one whose sweet smiles and innocent questions had masked a complicity I never imagined, she had to face the consequences as well. I picked up my phone and typed, carefully, deliberately, a message that was calm and cold. "We need to talk. Alone. Tonight." My hands did not tremble. My heart, though pounding with anticipation, was steady, because I knew the power I held, and I was prepared to wield it with surgical precision. When she arrived, I watched her from the shadows for a moment, studying her nervous, confident little steps, the way she tilted her head when she tried to smile, her attempts to appear in control despite knowing she was walking into the lioness's den. But as soon as the door closed behind her, the illusion shattered. I was fully present, every inch of my being coiled like a spring, radiating authority, seduction, and danger in equal measure. And I saw her falter the moment our eyes met, because she had never seen me like this. And she realized, too late, that the woman she had underestimated, mocked silently, and perhaps envied in small ways, had become the ultimate weapon, the embodiment of every fantasy he had ever hidden from me and far beyond anything she had imagined. And I began with soft words, deceptively casual, tracing the edges of her confidence, picking apart her bravado with questions that felt innocuous but were designed to unnerve, until she was trembling subtly, her composure cracking in small, precise increments. And then I escalated, each glance, each gesture calculated to destabilize her further, to make her aware that the safety she believed she had with him was an illusion, a lie, and that the same power that had broken him could consume her as well. Meanwhile, Arjun sat in the study, the remnants of our earlier encounter leaving him drained, bewildered, trapped between relief and horror. And I could see him watching us through the narrow glass of the study door, his mind piecing together the realization that his two worlds were colliding, and the chaos he had once orchestrated in secret was now turned against him in full force. And I reveled in the precise panic that danced across his features, because every twitch, every gulp, every bead of sweat was proof of the control I wielded. And I would not release it until he understood the magnitude of his betrayal. I guided Gia to the couch, letting her settle slightly before beginning the real interrogation. Not with anger, not with screams, but with calm, deliberate cruelty, asking her how it felt to invade someone's life so intimately, to steal moments and memories, to become the instrument of another woman's pain, and watching her flinch, seeing the guilt, the shame, the fear, building inside her like a storm that I controlled. I realized the power was intoxicating, a slow-burning heat that made my pulse thrum in harmony with the chaos I had created. And yet, amid the dominance, there was artistry, a rhythm, a dance between predator and prey, between betrayal and justice. And I orchestrated it all with patience, letting her squirm under the weight of truth, under the shadow of the woman she had underestimated, until finally I allowed a flicker of mercy, just enough to show her the choices she had squandered, the opportunities for honor she had ignored, and she looked at me then, wide-eyed, broken, a mirror of the horror in Arjun's gaze, and I smiled softly, coldly, because I knew the lesson had been absorbed, the impact irreversible. I turned back to Arjun then, his trembling form a testament to the failure of his control, and I watched as comprehension dawned on him, piece by piece, realization by realization, that the man who had hidden his lust, his lies, his betrayals from me was now powerless, ensnared in the web of his own creation. And I whispered, in a voice soft yet laced with venom, "Do you see now? Every secret, every stolen touch, every fantasy, they are all mine to command, and you have none of mine." His lips parted, no sound escaping as he absorbed the scope of his defeat. The collapse of the worlds he thought separate but now intertwined and dominated by me. And I walked slowly around him, each step measured, every movement radiating authority, sensuality, and danger, letting him absorb the consequences of his arrogance until the tension was nearly unbearable, thick in the air like smoke. And then I spoke again, softly, clearly, leaving nothing to chance. "This isn't the end. It's only the beginning. You'll remember every second of tonight, and so will she. And me? I'm just getting started." I step back, letting the silence stretch, allowing them to feel the full weight of my control, the full scope of my transformation, the full consequence of their actions. And I left them there, trembling, silent, exposed. A perfect tableau of victory. And as I closed the door behind me, I knew that the war was won, that I had not only confronted the betrayal, but reshaped it, that every lie, every deception, every stolen moment was now a weapon in my hands. And the realization that I had achieved total mastery over the situation brought a cold, euphoric thrill that no words could contain. And I smiled at the thought of the chapters yet to come. The dark, delicious unfolding of power, the exquisite chaos I had orchestrated, knowing that the next time the camera would catch me, the world would see the ultimate revenge, the ultimate reckoning, the final, satisfying collapse of lies and betrayal. Smash that subscribe button now. The next dark chapter gets even twistier, and you won't believe how she breaks him completely.